After 52 years of questions about who killed 6-year-old Ljubica Topic, Ljubica's abduction, sexual assault, and murder in Windsor in 1971 shocked the country. Tips poured in.
On July 15, 2005, Patricia Joseph vanished without a trace from her apartment in Fort Jones, California, leaving authorities puzzled and her family devastated. After 18 years of mystery and unanswered questions, justice has finally been served in the case of Patricia Joseph. Who was the person responsible for the disappearance of Patricia Joseph? And why did it take 18 long years to finally solve this perplexing case? Welcome to Mysterious 7, where we share baffling cases from across the globe. Today we're looking at an 18-year-old cold case that was finally solved in 2023. But first, if you haven't already done so, please consider clicking the subscribe button. We're very close to 100,000, and we'd really appreciate it if you could help us reach that milestone, and the like button if you enjoy our content. Without any further ado, let's dive right into this mystery. This chilling crime took place in Fort Jones, a small town located in Siskiyou County, California, with a population of just over 800 people. It's located near the southernmost point of the Cascadia bioregion and is one of many towns that surround Mount Shasta. This is a small and quiet community known for its historic landmarks and natural beauty. The city was named after Colonel George W. Jones, who established a fort in the area in 1852 during the California Gold Rush. Patricia Joseph, who was the former owner of a quaint little cafe called the Country Time Cafe in Fort Jones, was a 56-year-old woman with a warm heart and a loving family. The people of Fort Jones remember Patricia as a woman who brought joy and comfort to so many through her delicious food and warm hospitality. Her legacy lived on in the memories of those who have been fortunate enough to know her. Unfortunately, the mystery of her death remained unsolved, casting a dark shadow over the town for years to come. On July 15, 2000, a woman named Patricia Joseph was reported missing. It's not known how long she'd been gone before the report was made, nor is it clear what circumstances led to her disappearance. As the days passed, concern grew for Joseph's whereabouts, and soon enough, a search party was organized to try to locate her. But despite their best efforts, there was no sign of her, and the search party returned empty-handed. After being reported missing for several days, the body was discovered in the Klamath River, which was nearly 30 miles away from her house. The news of her discovery spread like wildfire through the town, and everyone was left with one question: what had happened to her? A forensic autopsy was performed, which revealed that she died from several blunt force wounds and asphyxia. It was a heartbreaking discovery for everyone who knew her. To make matters even more troubling, Joseph's body was found partially dressed and had been in the water for several days. It was a gruesome sight, and the townspeople were left to grapple with the horror of what had taken place. The community was on edge, waiting for any new developments in the case. They wanted closure for the victim's family and to see justice served. Everyone hoped that the diligent work of the detectives would lead to the discovery of new evidence and ultimately result in the perpetrator being charged and convicted for the heinous crime. The detectives assigned to Joseph's case were determined to leave no stone unturned in their pursuit of justice. Despite the setback of not finding any viable leads initially, they refused to give up on the case. They knew that the key to solving the crime lay in leaving no stone unturned. The detectives worked tirelessly, following up on every tip and lead that came their way, no matter how small or insignificant it seemed. In Siskiyou County, there was a man named Philip William Fraze. In 2012, he was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and murdering Patricia Catherine Joseph. However, he was never formally charged with the crime. After his arrest, the district attorney, J. Kirk Andrus, made an announcement that his office had to dismiss the warrant on Fraze due to a lack of evidence to take him to trial and win a murder conviction. The news was devastating for the family and friends of the victim, who were hoping for justice to be served. Despite the setback, the sheriff's detectives continued to investigate the cold case with great fervor, and Andrus remained optimistic that additional evidence would be uncovered. He believed that the case could still be solved and that the perpetrator would be brought to justice. It was a cold case that had gone unsolved for years, haunting the people of Siskiyou County and leaving a sense of unease in its wake. The killing of Patricia had been a tragic event, one that had left the community shaken and searching for answers. But in early 2021, hope began to stir once more when Siskiyou County Sheriff Jeremiah LaRue created a cold case and forensic evidence team. The team was made up of highly skilled professionals dedicated to assisting major crimes detectives in their investigations, with a focus on prioritizing the numerous cold cases and utilizing modern advancements to review physical evidence. With advances in science and technology since the case had first been opened in 2005, the cold case team saw an opportunity to re-examine the evidence with fresh eyes, using cutting-edge techniques to analyze it in ways that had never been possible before. They were determined to leave no stone unturned in their quest for justice, working tirelessly to uncover any and all clues that could lead them closer to the truth. Their efforts were not in vain. The cold case team completed a comprehensive review of the investigation, carefully examining every shred of evidence in their possession. And when they'd finished, they resubmitted that evidence to the Department of Justice for a fresh analysis. The outcomes were quite fascinating. They were able to identify a suspect who had long been suspected of being involved with the aforementioned Patricia's murder using current forensic procedures and the evidence. The irrefutable evidence linked Fraze to the crime and gave the Siskiyou County residents the much-needed closure they'd been seeking. It was a momentous occasion, a triumph of modern technology and dogged determination. And as the news of the arrest spread throughout the community, there was a sense of relief and gratitude that justice had finally been served. The cold case team had proven that even the oldest and most challenging cases could be solved with the right tools, the right people, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. On February the 8th, 2023, the Siskiyou County Superior Court was filled with people eagerly waiting for the formal arraignment of Fraze. He was charged with the unlawful killing of Patricia Joseph, a crime that had remained unsolved for years. Fraze appeared before the judge, looking stoic and detached as he listened to the charges against him. As the hearing progressed, it became clear that the evidence against Fraze was strong. He was denied bail and ordered to remain in custody at the Siskiyou County Jail with a $2 million bail. The courtroom erupted into murmurs and whispers as people tried to make sense of what they'd just heard. Finally, after years of waiting, justice was finally being served. The satisfaction of Sheriff LaRue, who had led the investigation of the cold case team, was expressed in his statement. He stated that the arrest was the result of a determination of the investigators and reflected their faithful commitment to pursuing justice for victims of violent crimes and their families. He mentioned that the cold case team would continue to focus on such cases with dedication. LaRue also commended everyone involved in the investigation for their devotion and thanked the district attorney's office for their assistance. He expressed that the hearts of the investigators were with Patricia's family, and they hoped that the arrest would lead to closure and healing. The news of Fraze's arrest sent shockwaves through the community. Finally, after all these years, justice had been served. People expressed their gratitude to the cold case team, who had worked tirelessly to bring closure to the case. And while nothing could bring Patricia back, her family finally had the closure they needed to begin the healing process. In the days, weeks, and months that followed, the family was consumed with grief and despair. They struggled to come to terms with their loss, to make sense of the senseless, and to find a way to move forward in a world that felt so bleak and empty without their mother. But amidst the pain and sorrow, the family held on to one thing: hope that justice would be served, that the person responsible for their mother's death would be held accountable for their actions, and that they would find closure and peace at last. And so, when the family took to Facebook to express their thoughts and feelings, it was with a mixture of sadness, longing, and determination. They spoke of their deep desire for justice, of their yearning for closure, and of their longing for their beloved mother. But they also spoke of something else, something that was just as important to them. They spoke of their desire to remember their mother through shared memories and photographs, of the comfort that positive reminiscences brought to them, and of the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. It was a poignant reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope. Hope for justice, hope for healing, and hope for a brighter tomorrow. And as the family continued to share their thoughts and feelings with the world, they inspired others to do the same, to hold on to hope, and to remember that even in the midst of tragedy, love will always endure. Our coverage has provided some insight into the tireless work of law enforcement officials and their unwavering commitment to bringing closure and justice to families who have suffered the loss of their loved ones, which is why reporters and channels work hard on such cases. While it can be difficult to confront the painful realities of these cases, it's important to remember that there are teams of dedicated professionals working around the clock to bring these cases to a close. And while we may not always see immediate results, we can take comfort in knowing that justice will ultimately prevail. We'd like to extend our deepest sympathies to the family and the loved ones of the victim, and we hope that this resolution brings some measure of comfort and closure. Do you think justice has been served after all these years? Or has the perpetrator been roaming free for too long? On May 14, 1971, 6-year-old Ljubica Topic was playing outside her family's home on Driard Road in Windsor, Canada, when a stranger lured her from her home with the promise of money. She was later subjected to assault and brutally murdered. Her body was discovered in a terrible state, and this shook the entire Windsor community. Who exactly was this monster who could kill a 6-year-old child so brutally? Our story today takes us to Windsor, Canada. Named the automotive capital of Canada, Windsor is well known for its affiliation with the original Ford Motor Company. Although it continues to be a pioneer in the automobile sector today, its casino and yearly fireworks display are what gives it more notoriety. Ljubica was born in 1965 to parents Luca and Paula Topic. She was one of the 10 children of the Topic family. Around 1966, Ljubica's family relocated from Yugoslavia to Windsor in Ontario, Canada, hoping to have a fresh start. Unfortunately, there's not much information about Ljubica or the rest of the Topic family before a tragic incident took place in 1971. It was the late afternoon of May 14, 1971, when Ljubica's father, Luca, was working outside of his home. The sun's gentle radiance was fading while the kids were playing in a parking lot close to the Topic's home at 1290 Driard Road in Windsor. Later in the evening, 6-year-old Ljubica rushed back home, excited and gasping from playing with her siblings. She asked her mother if she could stay outside and get some candy, but did not elaborate on where she was getting the sweets. Her mother agreed, seeing no harm in letting the girl have a treat. She told her not to be outside for too long. She had no idea this would be the last time she would ever see her daughter alive. Paula called her kids inside a short while later. When all the kids returned home, she noticed that Ljubica was not with them. Concerned, she asked the other children where Ljubica was. Her fear soon turned into terror when her 8-year-old son, Michael, began telling her a story that no parent would want to hear. Michael explained that as he and Ljubica were playing outside near a cafe across the street, an unknown man approached the children sometime between 8:30 and 9 p.m. Ljubica was persuaded to leave with this man when he offered her money for sweets. Ljubica, being none the wiser, took off strolling hand in hand with her kidnapper. Michael received a dime from the man to ride his bike in the opposite direction. When Paula realized that her little girl was missing, she frantically started searching for her. Paula desperately combed the streets of Windsor in search for her young daughter. But to her horror, both Ljubica and the man who took her vanished without a trace. As the panicked mother was searching for Ljubica, a police car happened to pass by. She stopped the car and explained to the officer that her little girl was missing. In a matter of minutes, several more officers were called, and soon many volunteer citizens were also assisting with the search, which would eventually turn into one of the largest police hunts in Windsor history. After hours with no trace of Ljubica, authorities feared the worst. While they were busy searching yards, streets, and back alleys, they knew that the odds were against them. Sadly, most children who are kidnapped are killed within hours of their disappearance. According to Michael, the sole eyewitness of the incident, the abductor was a thin-faced man with a slim physique, blonde hair, and possibly close to 6 feet tall. Police later issued a sketch based on his description. Michael placed the perpetrator in his teen years or early 20s. Unfortunately, there were no other clues after the sketch was released. It was the next day when the family's worst nightmare came true. An officer searching yards for the girl at 1 a.m. on May 15th made a terrible discovery. Ljubica's mutilated body was abandoned by the assailant close to a garage, not far from the gate leading to a back alley. Her face was covered in blood. Her right leg was broken. Beside her body, police discovered 2 of her teeth in the dirt that had been knocked out during the assault. What had happened to the 6-year-old girl was so horrific and disturbing that it caused quite an uproar in the community in and around Windsor. The investigation began, and police were eager to catch this depraved killer as soon as possible. However, they had no solid leads to go on other than the sketch created from Michael's description. Police questioned hundreds of people in the years following Ljubica's death. They followed up on tips and leads received from all around Canada and the United States. Unfortunately, they were all dead ends. Soon, the case turned cold. However, investigators never gave up on solving Ljubica's case, even after more than 4 decades had passed. They held onto mounds of potential evidence, including the young girl's teeth, soil samples, and her tiny worn brown shoes. All this in hopes that one day it would lead somewhere and give the victim's family some peace of mind. From 1970 to 2000, the case was reopened 6 times based on the hundreds of tips from all around Canada and the United States. In 2004, as technology evolved, investigators were able to obtain a DNA profile of the killer and submitted the profile to the National DNA Database, widely known as TIMECODES, but no match was found. The DNA was compared to many suspects, both those who were initially suspected and others who were added throughout the course of the lengthy investigation, but every effort remained fruitless. As technology evolved, DNA samples were also tested again and again. Certain evidence in many criminal investigations may be kept private and not made available to the public. This may be done for a number of reasons, including to preserve the validity of the inquiry, stop the spread of rumors, or safeguard prospective witnesses or victims. The choice to keep evidence from the public is typically decided by law enforcement or prosecutors and is based on a careful consideration of a number of issues, including the potential impact on the investigation and the public interest. The investigators made a discovery in 1971 of a tooth near Ljubica's body, but it wasn't until 2015 that they disclosed this information to the public. In 2015, authorities expressed a glimmer of hope as they revealed fresh DNA evidence from an adult male's front incisor tooth, which was found broken at the gum line near Ljubica's body. 2 of Ljubica's teeth were also found in the same vicinity. After forensic testing, 7 distinct sources of DNA were discovered to belong to the same person. Paula Topic, Ljubica's mother, was keenly aware that, with this new evidence, they had a limited window of opportunity to renew interest in her daughter's case and bring forth justice. She desperately hoped that this man's broken tooth could be the key to solving the puzzling cold case 44 years after the assault and murder of her 6-year-old daughter, Ljubica. It was at this time that Paula decided to speak to the media and expressed her grief after years of making no public statements. She claimed that every time she went to sleep, all she heard was her daughter shouting her name. And when she woke up, she realized that her daughter was gone all over again. She added that she kept a photo of her in the dining area. She quoted, "Every time I walk by and I see her picture, I'm reminded of her, and I miss my little girl so much." She hoped the police could finally deliver her the peace that had evaded her for 44 years. Detective Scott Chapman of Windsor Police started looking into this unsolved case in October of 2015. He called it one of the worst crimes in Windsor history. He described how that little girl had been viciously assaulted and violated. A great deal of force was used on her, which is tough to comprehend, especially considering that she was only 6 years old. Chapman was ready to give everything to solve this murder mystery. Unfortunately, even after questioning multiple people of interest, they still had no solid link to the suspect. Over the years, the case had involved more than 500 persons of interest. Despite the fact that more than 500 people of interest were investigated over the years, they were unable to trace or connect this tooth back to a suspect, and the case went cold again. Although the suspect's profile was built in 2015, as aforementioned, it would take another 4 years before the mystery behind the killer's identity was revealed to the authorities. As DNA technology evolved around 2018, detectives entered Frank Hall's DNA into the DNA databases such as GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA as a part of the further process of investigation. At some point, they hit a match with the killer's potential relative, and from there, through further investigative search, they were finally able to track down a specific person, the killer himself. Police identified the murderer as Frank Arthur Hall, an out-of-work laborer. During the time of Ljubica's murder, the man lived in her neighborhood, yet he was a stranger to her family. Hall was only 22 years old when he lured the little girl away from her house with the promise of some money. In the late afternoon hours of May 14, 1971, shortly after the murder, Hall relocated from Windsor to Edmonton and settled there. It's unclear from police records whether Hall's residence was searched as part of the initial inquiry back in 1971. However, Hall was well known to Windsor and other law enforcement agencies, primarily for property offenses such as theft. But sadly, justice would never prevail in this over half-a-century-old case. In February 2019, Hall passed away at the age of 70. After identification of the killer, Chapman rushed to Edmonton to brief Hall's family before that information was made public. The family was stunned by the revelation. Investigators, according to Chapman, don't believe that he was behind any other attacks in the Windsor region. However, Detective Chapman believes that with Hall's name in the public domain, more tips about other incidents may come in. It was not until 2023, 4 years after the initial identification of the perpetrator in this case, that authorities publicly came out with the information. At the time, they believed that it would violate Hall's and his family's right to privacy. Needless to say, the community were shocked to learn the truth that the killer lived among them all along, but got away with this horrific crime. It's genuinely frightening to learn that Ljubica's murderer was her own neighbor the entire time. It's heartbreaking to think that the girl's family endured 52 years of suffering without learning who kidnapped and killed their beloved daughter in such a cruel way. Given how easily Hall got away with murder, do you believe he might have committed other similar crimes? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more intriguing content.